Shame on you, Mr. Barr.
Can I just say, Mr.
Shame on you.
Can I just
My
say,
time has expired, and now you are projecting fear and violence nationwide in pursuit of obvious political objectives.
General Barr, your opening statement reads like it was written by Alex Jones or Roger Stone.
Let me ask you, do you think it's fair? Do you think it is fair for a 67-year-old man to be sent to prison for 7 to 9 years?
Is it permissible to drink a sip
It
of
is
coffee?
not permissible.
Not to drink.
We can't drink coffee in the
questions now.
Just like your Bureau of Prisons guards were poorly trained and allowed the most notorious inmate in our nation's last several years, Jeffrey Epstein, to conveniently commit suicide. Sad.
You have aided and abetted the worst failings of the president. So, but you can't tell me whether you discussed.
No, I'm not going to discuss what I discussed with the president.
Can you commit today that the department will not use federal law enforcement as a prop in the president's re-election campaign? The president wants footage for his campaign ads, and you appear to be serving it up to him as ordered.
Federal courts are under attack. Since when is it okay to try to burn down a federal court? Neutral criteria.
So, but you can't tell me whether you discussed.
No, I'm not going to discuss what I discussed with the president.
Can you commit today that the department will not use federal law enforcement as a prop in the president's re-election campaign?
We are not using
I just want to
federal law
close
enforcement.
with this thought. You really can't hide behind legal fictions this time, Mr. Barr. It's all out in the open, where the people can see what you are doing for themselves. The president wants footage for his campaign ads, and you appear to be serving it up to him as ordered. In most of these cities, the protests had begun to wind down before you marched in and confronted the protesters. And the protesters aren't mobs. They are mothers and veterans and mayors. In this moment, real leadership would entail de-escalation, collaboration, and looking for ways to peaceably resolve our differences. Instead, you use pepper spray and truncheons on American citizens. You did it here in Washington. You did it at Lafayette Square. You expanded to Portland. And now you are projecting fear and violence nationwide in pursuit of obvious political objectives. Shame on you, Mr. Barr.
Can I just say, Mr.
Shame on you.
Can I just
My
say,
time
Mr.
has expired. For what purpose does Mr. Jordan seek recognition?
No, Mr. Johnson.
Excuse me.
Could I just
what
have a
purpose
moment?
does Mr. My time has expired. For what purpose does Mr.
Mr. Johnson.
We are, as a nation, witnessing the federal government turn violently on its own people. And although responsibility for the government's failure to protect the health, safety, and constitutional rights of the American people belongs squarely to President Trump, he could not have done this alone. He needed help. And after he finished utterly humiliating his first Attorney General, he found you. In your time at the department, you have aided and abetted the worst failings of the president.
Mr. Chairman, could we take a 5-minute break?
Dean is recognized.
Could we take a 5-minute break, Mr. Chairman?
No.
That's a common courtesy,
Ms. Dean is
Mr. Chairman,
recognized.
of every witness.
I waited an hour for you this morning. I haven't had lunch. I'd like to take a 5-minute break.
Mr. Attorney General, we are almost finished. We're going to be finished in a few minutes. Otherwise, we can certainly take a break, but
You're class act.
okay.
Yeah.
After this, if you still want one, we'll have a break.
No, he wants a break now.
You want it now?
And you
Fine.
just mentioned
Committee-
rudeness.
committee
I think
will
we're
stand-
seeing it on display. Let's let
Committee
the
will
Attorney
stand
General
in
have a
recess.
break.
Committee will stand and recess it now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, some have chosen to respond to George Floyd's death in a far less productive way by demonizing the police, promoting slogans like "all cops are bastard," and making grossly irresponsible proposals to defund the police. The demonization of the police is not only unfair and inconsistent with principles of all people should be treated as individuals, but gravely injurious to the inner city communities. When communities turn on and pillory the police, officers naturally become more risk averse and crime rates soar. Unfortunately, we are seeing that now in many of our cities. The threat to black lives posed by crime on the streets is massively greater than any threat posed by police misconduct. The leading cause of death for young black males is homicide. Every year, approximately 7,500 black Americans are victims of homicide. The vast majority of them Around 90% are killed by other blacks, mainly by gunfire. Each of those lives matter. It is for this reason that in selected cities where there has been an upsurge in violent crime, we are stepping up and bolstering the activities of our joint anti-crime task forces.
To the effect of the St. John's Episcopal Church would have been overrun.
No, that was on Sunday night, I believe. And
Okay. Are you aware that the rector of the church, that the Episcopal Archbishop of Washington, and the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church nationally, along with the Catholic bishop of the Archdiocese of Washington, all denounced this police assault on the civil rights and civil liberties of the people?
Did they do that before or after the fire was put out?
Well, all that
The gentleman yields back. I would remind Mr. Jordan, Mr. Biggs, and Mr. Johnson to stop violating the rules of the committee, to stop violating the safety of the members of the committee, to stop holding themselves out as not caring by refusing to wear their...
Not to drink.
We can't
I'm
drink
getting ready to
coffee
ask
in the
questions
room.
now. I'm getting ready to ask questions. And I will.
Unbelievable.
Mr. Gates is recognized.
No. He's
No,
already went.
he went, and that's why I took off my mask,
My
Mr.
turn.
Chairman.
It's my turn. I'm going to go.
Okay.
General Barr, your opening statement reads like it was written by Alex Jones or Roger Stone. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes.
General Barr, you're expecting the American people to believe that you did not do what Trump wanted you to do when you changed that sentencing recommendation and lowered it for Roger Stone. You think the American people don't understand that you were carrying out Trump's?
I had not discussed my sentencing recommendation with anyone at the White House or anyone outside the
President
department.
Wanted you to do. And that's what you did.
No.
Attorney General
Let me ask you, do you think it's fair? Do you think it is fair for a 67-year-old man to be sent to prison for 7 to 9 years?
It was in accordance with the sentencing.
No, it was not.
You just said that it was, and your line prosecutors will testify that it was also. Now, I'm going to move on from that.
The department...
During your time as Attorney
It is
General
not the
for Herbert Walker Bush, you never changed the sentencing recommendation for a friend of Herbert Walker Bush, did you?
So as far as the weapons that you mentioned, let me get this straight. My understanding is that the people attacking the building had, among other things, rifles, explosives, knives, saws, sledgehammers, tasers, slingshots, rocks, bricks, lasers. Have I missed anything, or does that about cover it?
You have missed some things, but that's a good list. But, they have these powerful slingshots with ball bearings that they shoot. They've used pellet guns, we believe. We have found those projectiles have penetrated marshals to the bone. And they use the lasers to blind the marshals. They do start fires. They start fires if they can get the fire inside or through the windows, and they start fires along the outside of the courthouse. When the marshals come out to try to deal with the fire, they're assaulted.
Mr. Attorney General, would it be accurate to say that it's this administration's responsibility, and of course you're part of the administration, to see that federal laws are upheld and that the federal property is secure and safe and protected? Is that correct?
That's right, Congressman. There are sort of distinct missions. One mission is to enforce federal law. And by the way, the federal government is the sovereign of the United States. We have two sovereigns here in the United States, and we enforce the federal law all over the country. Every square foot of the country, we enforce federal law. The other is protecting federal property, and specifically U.S. courthouses, which are the heart of federal property in all 93 jurisdictions in the United States. And we have the obligation to protect federal courts, and the U.S. Marshals specifically have been given that obligation. Federal courts are under attack. Since when is it okay to try to burn down a federal court? If someone went down the street to the Prettyman Court here, that beautiful courthouse we have right at the bottom of the hill, and started breaking windows and firing industrial-grade fireworks in to start a fire, throw kerosene balloons in and start fires in the court, is that okay? Is that okay now? No, the U.S. Marshals have a duty to stop that and defend the courthouse, and that's what we are doing in Portland. We are at the courthouse defending the courthouse. We're not out looking for trouble. Mail-in voting, it substantially increases the risk of fraud.
But it doesn't make it likely.
That's all I said.
Now, I also saw on TV that the president said he's not sure that he'll accept the election results. Can a president just protest because he lost an election?
Protest in what sense?
Well, can he contest an election just because he simply loses?
Well, Gore versus Bush v. Gore was.
Well, I think that was over a slim voter margin. I'm talking about if it is very clear that the president has lost an election, does he have a remedy to contest the election?
Not that I'm aware of.
And so I ask you this question: does the Trump Justice Department seek to end systemic racism and racism in law enforcement? I just need a yes or no answer.
To the extent there is racism in any of our institutions in this country and the police, then obviously this administration will fully enforce this.
So you agree that there may be systemic racism?
To the extent, in where?
Let me continue my line of questioning.
I don't agree that there's systemic racism in the police department.
Specifically,
generally in this country.
You've gone through the Fifth Amendment and due process and just negated it. And the 10th Amendment, which leaves general policing to the law enforcement, to the states, has been forgotten. Maybe what happened was your secret police were poorly trained, just like your Bureau of Prisons guards were poorly trained and allowed the most notorious inmate in our nation's last several years, Jeffrey Epstein, to conveniently commit suicide. Sad. You misled Congress and the American people about Special Counsel Mueller's findings with your, quote, summary, unquote, of his report. It was issued about a month before you released the redacted portion of the Mueller report.
You know, it's one thing to fight crime with joint task forces. That involves the cooperation of state and local officials. But the governor of Oregon and the mayor of Portland has asked that the federal troops leave because the reaction has actually been in reverse proportion. People are showing up because the troops are there. And I'd like to say that so many of them, I would say most of them, are nonviolent.
Now, how do they continue the cover-up? Real simple. Jim Comey leaks his memos with the express purpose of getting a special counsel appointed to investigate something they already know is not true. And that's exactly what happened. We get 2 years, 19 lawyers, 40 agents, 500 witnesses, 2,800 subpoenas, and a $30 million cost to the taxpayer, and they come back with nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so all they got left is to attack the Attorney General, who had the courage to state the truth right from the get-go, the first time he testifies after he's confirmed. And you guys attack him every day, every week, and now you filed articles of impeachment against him. It's ridiculous. He had the courage to do what no one else would do at the Justice Department. Sally Yates wouldn't call it spying. Jeff Sessions wouldn't do it. Rod Rosenstein wouldn't do it. Chris Wray sure as heck isn't going to do it. So, Mr. Attorney General, I want to thank you for having the courage to call it what it was, spying. I want to thank you for having the courage to say we're going to get the politics out of the Department of Justice that was there in the previous administration. And maybe most importantly, and we're going to talk about this in our side on questioning, I want to thank you for defending law enforcement